So I think you all are pretty familiar with how God responds. Then God enters the conversation, chapter 38. He seems to let us wrestle. This is a concept I put down on page lesson, what I'm going to read here. He seems to let us wrestle with ideas and circumstances for periods of time and prepares us with truth before meeting with him. So, in other words, God allowed Satan to do all this stuff, but he didn't immediately restore him because he needed Job to experience. He needed Job to deal with circumstances. It was a test, after all, for his faith, and he had some, conversations here, and he struggled. He struggled mightily, and it's in that struggle that grew Job's character. And there's many verses in the New Testament talk about, rejoicing in light of afflictions, because we know God is developing our character. So it's no different for Job. All those concepts we learn about, the privilege of suffering in the New Testament, the opportunity to suffer for Christ in our life, enduring, bad times, enduring times of trial, they're all with purpose, and they're all to build our character. So we see this played out in Job's life. So the Lord challenges Job, chapter 38. Then the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind. Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words? Brace yourself like a man, because I have some questions for you, and you must answer them. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you know so much, who determined its dimensions and stretched out the surveying line? What supports its foundations, and who laid its cornerstone? As the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Who kept the sea inside its boundaries as it burst from the womb, and as it clothed the clouds and wrapped it in its thick darkness? For I locked it behind barred gates, limiting its shores. I said, this far and no farther will you come. Here your proud waves must stop. Have you commanded the morning to appear and caused the dawn to rise in the east? Have you made daylight spread to the ends of the earth, to bring an end to the night's wickedness? As the light approaches, the earth takes its shape like clay pressed beneath a seal. It is robed in brilliant colors. The light disturbs the wicked and stops the arm that is raised in violence. Have you explored the springs from which the seas come? Have you explored their depths? Do you know where the gates of death are located? Have you seen the gates of utter gloom? Do you realize the extent of the earth? Tell me about it if you know. He's overwhelming Job with unimaginable answers, unimaginable questions. We can't even begin to answer these. He goes on and on and on. I'm convinced that God disciplines us longer than we think we need to be. Always when we're being disciplined, we endure it far longer than when we think we need to be. If we only knew how much discipline we needed, we'd never be disciplined. We'd never last. His wisdom is greater than our wisdom, and he disciplines us accordingly. Think about David, who was pretty righteous to begin with. He killed Goliath, right? He's ready to take over as king. He's anointed already. He's got everything going for him. He's strong in faith. He could be king. But wait a minute. There's already a king. So what happens? God didn't kill Saul right away, did he? God allowed David to endure being chased and treated like a dog, and his friends treated like a dog, that they might follow David. David ends up leaving the kingdom altogether just to escape Saul. It's a ridiculous persecution that David endured for well over a decade, I think. Right? So he doesn't allow David to become king right away. He needs the discipline of the decade to shape him in the man to take reign of Israel. He needed to be developed. That doesn't happen overnight. So we need to embrace suffering. We need to embrace discipline. And it says as much in Hebrews chapter 12 about discipline. The Lord disciplines us because we're children. A good father disciplines his kids. He doesn't give them everything they need. He doesn't promote them right away. He allows them to work in the shop for a long time. getting their arm burnt and smashing their finger. He allows them to work in the shop, to grow, to learn, to figure things out. And then after a decade of working in the shop, he promotes you, like he did for David. So you don't learn all that stuff. You don't gain all that experience overnight. And it's no different with us. He leads Job to repentance through humbling him and overwhelming him with unanswerable questions. So who are we to question God? We're going to wrap this up. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, Solomon had to say about approaching God with care. He says in chapter 5, verse 1, as you enter the house of God, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. It is evil to make mindless offerings to God. Don't make rash promises, and don't be hasty in bringing matters before God. After all, God is in heaven, and you are here on earth. So let your words be few. So have you ever gone to God in prayer so frustrated and so bitter, so confused, and you really had nothing to say? I mean, really. And you think about complaining, but it doesn't matter. God knows all things. He knows your heart. He knows all the stuff you're going through. And sometimes you just sit there in prayer in silence before you speak. He eventually gives you peace. He eventually gives you something to say maybe. All I'm saying is sometimes it's okay to just sit before your God in your prayer room, wherever you are, in your car, even on the toilet, just putting things, but it's not as good on the toilet because you can't think as better. Sorry, it's a bad reference. But nevertheless, you can do it anywhere. Just share your life with God. You don't need to say anything. Let your words be few. Help me. Have mercy on me. Sometimes it's all you need to say. So how do we serve people that suffer loss? Well, I want to look at practical applications. Before I do that, I just want to point out that we know in Job 42, Job sets his friends straight. He shares directly that he's not happy with his three friends. So we need to look at it in that light. He doesn't address Elihu at all. And I think the reason why he doesn't address Elihu because he doesn't need to. Elihu was his servant to prepare him for God, and Elihu did what was right. So Elihu was just there to serve a purpose, to bridge him to God. So Elihu is kind of out of the picture now. And God addresses the three friends, and he asks his three friends to give offerings, and he tells Job to pray for them. So he's putting Job in a place of a priest where he's able to intercede for his three friends. It's very interesting. His three friends. Usually you don't think of a priest as your friend, do you? But let's think about this. In the New Testament, we're called to be priests. So we meet these friends, these wonderful friends. Some of them don't know Jesus. Some of them don't think God exists. Some of them are agnostic. I think about my friend Leonard. God made a special connection with me and Leonard, a special relationship. And eventually, Leonard was prepared to know about Jesus. And then, he's my Jewish friend by Jewish blood, and he read about the Old Testament, and he prepared him to Jesus. So all I'm saying is we need to be priests on behalf of God as ambassadors. So we have these friends that don't know Jesus to have compassion with them. He's asking Job to have compassion of his friends. I don't care how they spoke to you. I don't care what words they used. I don't care how they cursed at you. I don't care. I want you to pray for your friends. A very practical lesson from Job. Job does that. He prays for his friends. And you know what happens? He's restored. He forgives his friends, prays for them. He's restored. Everything. He gets everything back, including three beautiful daughters that we actually have names for. None of his family's named at all. I find it remarkable that he names his three beautiful daughters, more even over his sons. So it's interesting. I love how everything sums up. I love Job's comments. I only seen you before, but now I know you. I can't remember how that's worded. Job 42.
I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you.
So, yes, very good. So here's another key lesson. I've heard of you. Now I see you. This is my life in a nutshell. Hearing about God, hearing from other people about God that know God more than me, but it doesn't sink in. So I only heard about God. And only after he led me to a personal walk, a personal relationship, was I able to experience him. I didn't see a whirlwind, but I did see, had some miraculous encounters. People talking on behalf of God straight to me, directly answering prayer to me. So I once you experience God in that way, no one can take that from you, and you have that faith that's just, unlike any others, because you have a personal experience with God, the Almighty. And that's what I encourage everyone to pray for, their own experience, their own personal encounters with God. Please reveal yourself to me. And, Job basically was praying that all throughout. He wanted to meet with God. He, and indirectly, I think, asked for that experience, and Job gave it. And he restored Job. So how do we serve people that suffer loss? We listen to them. We listen. We don't have to say anything. But listening is the primary form of love. It is the primary form of love. Listening to someone. People want to be validated. People want to be heard. It's one of the things that's valuable about this group is we allow people to share and we listen to one another. Do not be quick to speak. Do not be judgmental. And prayerfully seek words to say. Prayerfully. Lord, give me the words to say to this person's life. Because I'll just say something stupid. I want to say what you have to give me. And he'll give it to you. But don't be quick to speak. That's really all I had to share. And we're, going on 2 hours?